Blood sugar can be measured in many different ways, and one of the biggest sources of confusion in diabetes is knowing which test matters and what the numbers actually mean. Blood sugar can be measured in the capillary blood glucose, venous blood, lab blood glucose, or interstitial fluid, CGM. A single number never tells the whole story. Different tests look at blood sugar over different time frames and often utilizes different units. Each one answers a different question. Understanding this removes panic and helps you use numbers as information, not judgment. Like and subscribe now so you don't miss future videos. Let's start with the simplest, the finger prick test. Capillary blood glucose, often called finger prick testing or CBG, shows your blood sugar at one moment in time. This, however, changes throughout the day. When checked often and at different times, it is useful for day-to-day decisions, spotting highs and lows, and understanding how food, exercise, stress, and medication, tablets or insulin, affects you. On its own, it does not diagnose diabetes. A lab venous sample is needed. But patterns over time are very helpful. 2. Fasting blood glucose is measured after at least 8 hours with no calories. This is a venous sample analyzed in the lab. This tells us how well your body controls glucose overnight and between meals. Normal fasting glucose is below 5.7 millimoles per liter, 100 milligrams per deciliter. Prediabetes is between 5.7 and 6.9 millimoles per liter, 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter. This can progress to type 2 diabetes over time. Diabetes is diagnosed when fasting glucose rises to 7.0 millimoles per liter or higher, 126 milligrams per deciliter, usually confirmed on a repeat test. 3. Random or post-meal blood glucose shows how your body handles glucose after eating. It is usually checked 1 to 2 hours after a meal. 2 hours after eating, normal glucose is below 7.8 millimoles per liter, 140 milligrams per deciliter. Prediabetes is between 7.8 and 11.0 millimoles per liter, 140 to 199 milligrams per deciliter. Diabetes is diagnosed at 11.1 millimoles per liter or higher, 200 milligrams per deciliter. Post-meal spikes are often the earliest abnormality, especially in insulin resistance and gestational diabetes. 4. HbA1c is a specific blood test that looks at long-term control. This is one of the most important tests to focus on. It reflects average blood sugar over roughly the past 2 to 3 months. HbA1c is reported as a percentage in the UK or in millimoles per mole in the US. Knowing your HbA1c result is very important. Normal HbA1c is below 5.7% or below 39 millimoles per mole. Prediabetes is between 5.7 and 6.4% or 39 to 47 millimoles per mole. Diabetes is diagnosed at 6.5% or higher, or 48 millimoles per mole or higher. This should ideally be repeated to confirm. HbA1c is very useful, but it can be misleading in situations such as anemia, pregnancy, kidney disease, or recent blood loss or blood transfusion. 5. Fructosamine is an alternative to HbA1c. It measures average blood sugar over a much shorter period, usually the last 2 to 3 weeks. There are no universally agreed diagnostic cutoffs, but fructosamine is helpful when HbA1c is unreliable or when rapid changes in control are expected. Think of fructosamine as a short-term version of HbA1c. 6. The oral glucose tolerance test, also called the OGTT, is the gold standard test used for diagnosis of diabetes or gestational diabetes. It measures how your body handles a glucose load. You attend fasting, have a fasting glucose checked, drink a measured glucose solution, and then have blood glucose checked again, usually at 2 hours. Cutoffs are the same as previously stated. This test can also tell you if you have an impaired fasting blood glucose, IFG problem, or an impaired glucose tolerance, IGT. Many people have a normal fasting glucose but an abnormal post-meal reading, which shows early glucose intolerance. 7. Continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, measures glucose continuously in the interstitial fluid under the skin. This avoids the need for daily finger pricks and gives you real-time information about your blood glucose levels. A typical CGM sensor, such as Dexcom or Freestyle Libre, stays on for about 10 to 14 days. CGMs do not diagnose diabetes, but they are extremely useful for understanding patterns over hours and days. They show trends, variability, time in range, and how glucose responds to food, exercise, sleep, and stress. It is particularly useful in detecting hypoglycemia, low blood glucose, which is dangerous. For most adults with diabetes, the usual target range is 3.9 to 10.0 millimoles per liter. The goal is more time in range, around 70%, not perfect numbers. So, which test matters most? The answer is none of them on their own. Fasting glucose looks at overnight control. Post-meal glucose shows food response. HbA1c reflects long-term averages. CGM shows daily patterns. Each test answers a different question. Numbers are not a judgment, they are tools. When you understand what each test means, you can stop reacting emotionally and start making informed, calm decisions. That understanding is the foundation of good diabetes care. If you want diabetes explained clearly, without confusion or fear, this channel is here to help you understand your numbers and take control with confidence.